Willkommen. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sean Huggins, and this is React with Hugs. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we got a crazy video planned. Check this out. Bam! Germany is back. We are so back. This guy's head is shaped exactly like a light bulb, and it's glowing like one too, at least on top, and I can't unsee that now. Anyways, let's stay focused, people. Let's stay focused. This is from EU Made Simple, titled, Germany Wants a Stronger Europe. Here's the plan. Link to the original video in the description, as always. But let's see what Germany has cooking for a stronger Europe. Los geht's!
It took 6 weeks of tough negotiations until this moment.
Hey.
Germany's new coalition rises with big plans. First,
Germany will fulfill the obligations in terms of defense.
Second,
Germany is willing to strengthen their own competitiveness.
Third,
And we will bring the European Union forward.
Big promises. But will Merz
Seems
deliver?
good.
The key message to Donald Trump is Germany is back on track.
Okay.
Germany is back. Those are the words of Friedrich Merz, the likely next chancellor of Germany from the center-right conservative CDU. He claims that after a relatively weak Ampel government, with Olaf Scholz at the helm, his new leadership will strengthen ties with Germany's neighbors and turn both Germany and Europe into true powerhouses again.
Make Germany great again.
And just 6 weeks after the election, he's managed to form a coalition with a signed agreement, faster than most other German governments before him.
Wow.
We've taken a look at that very coalition agreement.
CDU, CSU, and SPD. Okay.
To see what his new government actually plans to do. And of course, we will give you our analysis and opinion at the very end of the video.
Like it.
But first, let's very briefly rewind. These were the election results from February the 23rd.
AFD in second place. Anyways,
The center-right CDU, led by Merz, came out on top and quickly entered coalition talks with third-place center-left SPD, Scholz's party, to form a majority. Working with the far-right AFD was ruled out from the beginning, so this was really the only viable option. This gave the SPD surprising leverage in the negotiations, and it really showed. Just days after the election, the CDU broke a major campaign promise by agreeing to suspend Germany's strict debt brake. They've committed to borrowing 500 billion euros for infrastructure and up to another 500 billion euros for defense spending. That's a staggering 1 trillion euros of new borrowing. An unprecedented move in German politics and a very big win for the SPD, who've pushed for this kind of spending for years. When it comes to the ministries...
So when they lose, the chancellor is when they can do the stuff that they want to do. Politics is stupid.
The SPD also punched above their weight. Despite finishing in third, they secured 7 ministries, equal to the CDU 7, while the CDU sister party, the CSU, took 3. For us, as an EU-focused channel, the most interesting post might be the foreign ministry, which has gone to the CDU. And that makes sense, as Merz has put foreign policy at the center of his 4-year mandate. So, what exactly are the CDU, CSU, and SPD planning for Europe? Well, they've dedicated an entire chapter to it in their coalition agreement. And there are actually some bold and spicy ideas in there. So let's get into it.
Spicy, you say? Oh my.
The agreement kicks off very pro-EU, stating that Germany can only thrive with a strong and democratic European Union. And that's where things get super interesting fast. One of the very first things they highlight is Article 2 of the EU Treaty. You know, the part that defines the Union's core values: democracy, rule of law, and the respect for human rights. The coalition says they will now take a much tougher stance on countries that break these values. And they specifically call for enforcement tools, like the legal infringement procedures, or freezing EU funds, or even suspending a member state's rights, like their voting power in the EU Council. And let's be very honest here. Do we even need to guess who they're talking about? We made an entire video on this last week. And of course, we mean Hungary.
It is Hungary. Yeah. Apparently Hungary is being a little bit of a rascal over there. Hungary is being a little bit of a rascal, being a little silly goose. over there. So it's understandable looking to put something in place where you can kind of counteract this guy being such a little rascal.
And of course, we mean Hungary. Next up, the coalition wants to make the EU more competitive. And the big focus here is the EU single market. Now, people often assume the EU already has a full single market. But in practice, that's only true for goods. When it comes to services, finance, or regulation, there are still a lot of national barriers holding things back. The coalition names energy, medical products, pharmaceuticals, digital technology, telecommunications, transport, and air travel. For example, a medical company in Germany might struggle to get its product approved quickly across other EU countries because health regulations still vary a lot from one member state to the other. A true single market would streamline this, saving time, money, and potentially even lives. The coalition also emphasizes moving towards a true savings and investment union, with deeper integration of capital markets and banking systems. Why does this matter? Think of startups. A small tech company in Portugal should be able to easily raise funds from investors in Germany or the Netherlands. But right now, cross-border investment is still super complicated and fragmented.
I'm here today asking you for funding for my startup, madewithhugs.com. For all investment opportunities, please visit madewithhugs.com. Get in on the ground floor of the greatest investment of your lifetime. Head to madewithhugs.com right now. All right. Anyways.
At the same time, the coalition also stresses that competition within the single market should be based on innovation and performance, not on who can offer the lowest taxes. That's why they're pushing for a common corporate tax base across all member states.
That's cool.
To level the playing field and prevent a race to the bottom. Next up, we have defense. The coalition advocates for advancing a European defense union. They fully acknowledge that NATO remains the cornerstone of collective defense for most EU member states, but they also call for the creation of a European pillar within NATO. Now, before anyone starts shouting, European army! No, that's not what this is. There's no mention here of a standing EU army anywhere. What is mentioned, though, is standardization and joint defense industrial cooperation. For example, the coalition supports stronger cooperation within the European defense industry, the development of key defense technologies, joint defense projects between member states, and a unified European defense market with coordinated export rules. And as we mentioned earlier, Germany is planning to spend significantly more on defense. Maybe even up to 3.5% of GDP. A key focus here is also Ukraine. Germany pledges...
Oh my god. Yo, bro, is Merz a freaking giant? Or is Zelensky a freaking child? Little baby boy, little baby man, or both. Maybe both. Maybe Zelensky's a little baby man. Hold on a second. Friedrich Merz is freaking 6'6"? Holy crap, that's 1.8 meters. Yo, he's 1.8 meters tall. Dude, Merz is a freaking giant. Friedrich Merzwitzky over here. Look at this guy.
To increase its military, political, and economic support, alongside allies, and backs Ukraine's NATO path. Now, the next part of the agreement is especially interesting. And pretty bold. Germany says that EU enlargement and the EU's ability to function have to go hand in hand. In simple terms, no more new member states unless the EU gets serious about internal reform. And at the top of that reform list, ditching the veto in the Council of the EU. The coalition wants to move to qualified majority voting for all key decisions, including foreign policy, defense, and fiscal policy. To make that happen, they want to use what's known as the Passerelle clause, a legal... And clearly, the CDU has been watching our videos, because they also support the idea of a multi-speed Europe, where smaller groups of member states can move forward on certain policies, as long as the door remains open for others to join later. And we made an entire video about that, linked above. In a nutshell, though, the coalition recognizes the geopolitical importance of the European Union itself, and they state that enlargement policy isn't just a bureaucratic process, is a transformative force and geopolitical necessity, and that means updating the accession process to be more performance-based and flexible. In other words, people in accession countries should actually feel the benefits of moving closer to the EU, not just hear promises about a distant future. So those are the key policies and ideas for the EU and Germany. And while I actually like a lot of what's in there, especially around EU reform and removing the veto vote, there are also parts I really don't like. Take the foreign policy chapter, for example, especially when it comes to dealing with the Trump administration, or rather, not dealing with it. Trump's trade war with Europe and his weird coziness with Russia's Putin are completely ignored. Instead, the coalition agreement reads, "Relations with the USA remain of paramount importance. The transatlantic partnership is a great success story for both sides, which must be continued under the new conditions. That is why we're taking more responsibility for our common security." I mean, this sounds great on paper, but to me it feels completely unrealistic. Haven't we learned by now that Trump is so unpredictable and extreme that you can't plan around him? Everyone who's gone on a pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago, flattering him endlessly, has gotten very little in return. Personally, I would have liked to see a much clearer path for how Europe can diversify away from the US. I really don't want a strategy that involves waiting out Trump and just hoping for the best.
Well, I got news for you. He's trying to run again in 2028. So it's not supposed to be allowed, but he's trying to find a way, and maybe he'll just do it and no one will stop him. So who knows? We might not get rid of him by this time. Yay. Anyways,
I'd much rather we build a Europe that's strong enough that we don't have to care as much what happens in Washington every 4 years. Nonetheless, stronger ties to allies like Canada, the UK, and France are also highlighted, along with deeper partnerships and trade agreements with Mercosur, India, and a lot of the rest of the world. So all in all, it's an ambitious and interesting plan for Europe. Next, the coalition agreement still needs to be approved by the parties involved. And if all goes as expected, Merz will likely be sworn in as Chancellor in early May. We'll keep you updated as it all unfolds.
All right. Wow. Lots of information here today. I think overall, as a fat, dumb, uneducated American YouTuber, I have to say a lot of this stuff sounds pretty good on paper. I'm curious to see if it actually gets put into practice, and if so, if it works out in a good way. But of course, as always, I'm curious what you guys, the experts, have to say about it. What do you think of the video? Let me know your thoughts. Leave your mustard down in the comments section below. But that's all the time that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.